Thanks for joining us this afternoon for the webinar. We've just opened the doors, so we'll let you through the virtual doors. That was, hopefully you didn't hear too much of that. That was my computer reminding me that I have to give this webinar at this point. Just to let you know, we are recording this session this afternoon. Your microphones and your cameras are disabled, but we may enable them for questions later on. So please be aware you will be recorded if you do so. We are recording it so that we can share the webinar on the website in due course for anybody that can't attend the event today. So thank you very much for joining us for this webinar. We're going to be talking about the new pathway for the neurophysiology STP in Intraoperative Neuromonitoring this afternoon. I'm joined by Rachel Hutchings, who is the Curriculum Lead Editor for Neurophysiology and the head of the Neurophysiology Service at Nottingham University Hospital Trust and a clinical scientist, and by Emma Bowers as well, who for part of the week is an STP Training Programme Director with the National School, and for the rest of the week at Newcastle University Hospital Trust, where she's involved in providing intraoperative neuromonitoring. I've forgotten to introduce myself. I'm Chris Fisher, and I look after the curriculum for the National School. So, let me see if I can get it away. So just briefly this afternoon, first of all, we are going to officially launch the new curriculum for you. I'm then going to hand over to Rachel to talk you through the curriculum, and Emma's going to talk you through hosting a trainee on the pathway if you're thinking about taking a trainee with you. We'll come back to some resources and open to the floor for Q&A from there. So I'll talk very briefly to begin with. So I am very pleased to say that the curriculum is now published and available on our website, and I'll direct you to that in just a moment. But this is now available for you to view and have a look and see if it is something that you could deliver or you would like to aspire to deliver in your organisation and support an STP trainee in the future. I'm going to talk very briefly about the process of developing a curriculum. The first thing we do is establish a curriculum development group and appointing a lead editor. In this case, Rachel stepped up to take on the job. We then gather together a group with the right expertise to be able to move forward in developing the curriculum. And then we get the group together on a number of sessions to work through getting the right words in the right order on a piece of paper. Once we have that draft curriculum together, we then go through a quality assurance process with 3 different steps. First of all, we'll complete a stakeholder review. So you might have been involved in that earlier in the year. We've now published the results of that. So if you want to see how your comments influenced the final shape of the curriculum, that information is available online. We also do what we call an internal review to make sure that the curriculum shapes up and meets all the requirements for an STP. And finally, we also do a PPI review. We ask for some feedback from our public and patient involvement representatives to make sure that the curriculum is meeting their needs as well from the patient point of view. That brings us to kind of the here and the very now, where we are launching the curriculum. And I hope in the next few weeks where the expression of interest will be made available to you. It's previously been called an expression of interest. I think it may be called a commitment to training in the future, and Emma will walk you through the process for that in just a moment. That takes us forward to trainees starting on the programme, if you do commit to training, next September in 2025. So the really important job I need to do this morning is just say a huge thank you to everybody that was involved in developing this curriculum, particularly to Rachel as lead editor. We suffered some challenges on the way, and Rachel persevered to take this project through to completion and to be able to launch the curriculum with you here today. And Emma as well, hugely for driving this through the school. But also to everybody who was part of the curriculum development group. I feel very strongly that developing a curriculum should not be a solo endeavour, and it is the depth and the wisdom and the expertise and the dedication of that curriculum group that makes sure we are developing a robust curriculum that will serve you in your practice. So thank you again to everybody who was involved in this. It's so important that this is involves the right people. But I think that's enough from me for now, and I will hand over to Rachel to talk you through the curriculum itself.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. If my computer will wake up and move this on. Oh, there we go. It needed 3 button presses to make it move. Friday afternoon IT. Right, so I'm just going to give you a quick walk through the curriculum for the Neurophysiology STP, but with an option to concentrate on intraoperative neuromonitoring. So for those of you that are familiar with STP, you'll know that the year 1 is a rotational year where trainees spend a maximum of 8 weeks in the individual areas. So for the IONM curriculum, this will be the same as the general neurophysiology curriculum. So there'll be an introduction to neurophysiology, an introduction to cardiology, respiratory physiology, and clinical assessment and investigation. The remainder of that first year will be spent working in IONM, so developing the practical skills required to carry out that aspect of the work. The rotations are at 8-week maximum in each area, so that does leave quite a significant amount of time to get hands-on practice. In the second year, there will be 1 neurophysiology module and 1 specialist monitoring module. And in the third year, there's a further neurophysiology module and then 2 further specialist monitoring modules. All button presses this time, slowing down. So just to go into a little bit more detail about the modules. In year 2, the trainees will study nerve conduction and evoked potentials 1. So that covers all 3 modalities of evoked potential. So that's visual, brainstem auditory, and somatosensory, and then upper limb nerve conduction studies. So it really looks at the focal nerve entrapments in the arms, but we'll cover all the anatomy and physiology, the technological aspects of doing those tests, the machine settings, stimulation parameters, all of those things, which are actually really useful for neuromonitoring as well. In the third year, they'll do a second nerve conduction and EP module. So this one tends to concentrate more on lower limb nerve conduction studies and brings knowledge and awareness and understanding of electromyography to the trainees as well. And then within that module, there is a training activity around IONM, which is about reviewing the evidence-based practice for it. The modules tend to take about 15 weeks in the workplace. That's what I found from personal experience of having multiple STP trainees over the last 10 years or so. Oh, we did it on 1 button press this time. Exciting. So the specialist IONM modules. In phase 2 or year 2, the module is planning intraoperative neuromonitoring. And then in year or phase 3, we have performing intraoperative neuromonitoring and reporting and reviewing intraoperative neuromonitoring. So planning IONM. Very broadly, the way that we've thought about this as a curriculum group is everything that needs to happen before the patient goes into theatres, everything that happens from when you take the patient into theatres, and everything that happens after the case is complete. So if you keep those very broad principles in your minds, hopefully this will all make sense. So in terms of planning IONM, we've got preparing, recording and stimulating electrodes, programming the machine. And then we've got a series of more sort of desktop exercises. So planning monitoring for different scenarios. We ask the trainees to produce risk assessments around monitoring. We include pre-operative recordings, and we know that not every department does those, but it's about understanding why they may be needed, what you would do. And then there's reviewing the evidence base for warning criteria. So what alerts are you going to use during monitoring to indicate that there's a problem with the monitoring with the surgery? Performing IONM. So as I say, this is from when we go into theatres. So it includes setting up the equipment, so where everything needs to be in relation to the operating table, the anaesthetic machine, preparing the patient. So that's very obviously putting all the electrodes on, setting your baselines before the surgeons start doing anything. And then the big part, which is the monitoring, which includes dealing with technical problems and alerts. The module encourages participation in pre-surgical briefing, so that brings in the MDT working, of meeting before the case with the surgeons, the ODPs, the anaesthetists, checking the function of the machine. So this brings in calibration and making sure that all the parameters are correct, and really, really importantly, communication. Communication amongst the team so that everybody's on the same page and that patient safety is at the absolute core of everything that we're doing. And then reporting and reviewing IONM. Sorry for the pause. It was the slow fade into the slide. I was reading two titles at the same time. So this is about the generating the final report. So when the monitoring is complete, the final review of the data. So we know that you're constantly reviewing IOM whilst you're doing it and you're constantly feeding back. But this is about those final reports that you produce that go into the patient's notes as part of their record. There's some things around backing up data, understanding GDPR, how long data should be kept for. And then again, there's some more kind of desktop and less practical, more theoretical training activities that we ask the students to do. So producing process maps of the patient's journey through a spinal monitoring or spinal surgery pathway, presenting case studies where alerts have occurred. And we want these presenting not just to your peers, but to people that are involved with the patient. So that might be a patient group, it might be at a spinal surgeon divvy day. We want them to do audit and we want them to do critical evaluation of standard operating procedures. So as with all STP curriculum, there are clinical experiences associated with each module. So I just kind of picked out 3 at random. So we would like the trainees to attend spinal clinics, both preoperatively and postoperatively, observe spinal radiology. So that's looking at things like bending films, MRI scans. And then also there's the opportunity to observe different kinds of monitored surgery. So I put in brackets non-spinal. So that could be cranial surgery, cardiac surgery that involves monitoring the brachial plexus, all sorts of things like that. And that's me done.
So I think it's over to me now. So hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. So I'm going to be talking about hosting a trainee and what you need to do in order to get a trainee onto the pathway. So in summary, I'm going to be talking about what the initial decision is that you need to make, then what the indicative timelines are, talking about the expressions of interest, finding out about it and how to complete it, gaining national school accreditation, and and then going on to welcoming that trainee. And to be honest, the last three sort of all really combine together. The things that you need to do for them overlap quite considerably, but we'll talk that through as we go along. So the first decision that needs to be made is, are you wanting an in-service trainee or a direct entry trainee? So if you're looking at in-service, are you employing somebody who would benefit from completing this programme? Because if you are, then you can nominate them as an in-service trainee. However, it's important to realise that that member of staff will be on a 3-year secondment, so must be removed from all previous clinical work because they need to spend 100% of their time on STP. Or if you don't have anybody appropriate, then you can look at direct entry, and this is an individual who will be recruited via the national recruitment event. So once you've made that decision, then everything else is fairly straightforward. So in terms of indicative timelines, I'm saying it's indicative because there is a bit of wriggle room. So the expressions of interest are going to be published anytime, maybe the beginning of July, but hopefully by the end of June. So you've got usually until about the middle of August, but if it's not published until the beginning of July, it may well creep into the beginning of September. So a bit of wriggle room for that. And then you tend to be notified whether the expression of interest is successful round about December time. We then have an advert out and invite applications for candidates to put an application together to get onto the STP programme. We ask them to sit the situational judgment test, and then we'll be asking you as members of the profession to help with the shortlisting, and then we'll go on to be interviewing, which again you as members of the profession will be heavily involved with. We can then allocate trainees round about June time, ready for all the pre-employment checks to occur within the trusts so that the trainee can start in September. And that's the indicative timeline that we're looking at year on year. So if we're looking at submitting the expressions of interest in the next couple of weeks, then we're looking at trainees starting in September 2025. So in terms of expressions of interest, how do you find out about it? So hopefully you are on your Healthcare Science Commissioner's mailing list. If not, I suggest you get in touch with them, and these are the names and email addresses. Equally, if you've got an organisational healthcare scientist lead, they will have information about the expressions of interest. So again, get in touch with them and ask them to forward it on the link once they've received it. And also your education and training departments should also be sent the link for the expressions of interest. So you might want to get in touch with them to make sure that they forward it to you so that there's no risk of not finding out about it. So completing the expression of interest, it does seem quite long, but most of the information is fairly straightforward. So what is it that you need? First of all, obviously, your name, your trust and region, just so that we've got a contact detail. The number of trainees that you want to train. If you're asking for an in-service trainee, then we ask if you could ideally put a name to that in-service trainee, although also appreciate that possibly if you're prepared to train one person, but you've got perhaps a number of people who are appropriate to be in-service trainees, you might want to do competitive interviews within your department. So you might not quite have their names at that point in time, but if they've got them, it would be great. There's also the question that if you are doing an in-service trainee and they are unsuccessful, whether you would be happy to take a direct entry. We'd want to see plans for rotations, so the dates that you're planning on doing those rotations in the first year and the contact details to show that you've gone about and got those planned and sorted. what your accreditation status is with the national school. Since this is a new programme, then nobody is currently accredited, so you would be awaiting accreditation with that, and again we'll talk about the accreditation status, how to get accreditation in the next slide. Whether you've got other accreditations such as IQIPS. So just again, to make sure that your capacity is okay, we just ask about how many other trainees you've got in the department, and also ask for main contacts for the training officer, the organisational lead, healthcare scientist if you've got one, your trust educational lead, the HR contact that you have for your department, and the finance contact, so that we can get things sorted in terms of pre-employment checks and being able to put money across to the trust. Again, information on where the trainee will be mainly based, sort of obviously with your centre, but there may well be training activities that you're unable to achieve. So just what other places you would be expecting trainees to go in order to gain that experience. And then we ask you to nominate names of people involved in shortlisting and also involved in the interviews, because as I say, we definitely need the profession to be involved in those stages. So as I say, it is really quite straightforward. And if you've got any open day information in order to encourage people to apply for your centre, so that we can put the adverts on the school website. So again, all this information is on our website. And it's more, whilst it's called an expression of interest, it is far more than just an expression of interest. It is much more an intention to train, even though it's called expression of interest. And it is really quite straightforward to complete. So in terms of accreditation, so if you've already got accreditation for another specialism and you're planning on taking an intraoperative neuromonitoring pathway trainee, then can I urge you to get in touch with our accreditation team, and what they will be asking you for is a training plan for the rotations if you're not already accredited for neurophysiology. If you are, then they've already got that information, and then a generic training plan for the specialism, just to show how you can meet those learning outcomes that are in the curriculum. And we would also and that information is all on the website in terms of training plans. And we would just be asking some information about the proposed training officer for this particular pathway. So that's if you've got accreditation for another specialism. If you're new to the game and haven't got accreditation at all, then again, we would ask you to get directly in touch with the accreditation department, and they in turn will send you a form with a number of different parts associated with it. Again, information is on our website, and essentially we're just looking at the processes and making sure that people know what their roles and responsibilities are to ensure that trainees have a high quality training experience. So we're interested in, say, qualifications and registration, understanding and knowledge, seniority and experience, and making sure that there is time for training for people who are involved in providing that training, and ensuring that at least one person has attended the national school Train the Trainer, so that they can cascade that information through to the rest of the department. And again, just like previously, we would be expecting training plans for both the rotations and for the specialisms. So in terms of welcoming a trainee, again, there's plenty of resources on the website, and there's a really nice checklist that you're more than welcome to follow, in which, again, the link is here. But this is basically to make sure that everybody in the department is aware that the trainee is due to arrive. Everybody's aware of what the curriculum involves. Those involved in assessing the trainee is aware of how to use our e-portfolio, that the trainee, when they come, have a desk and access to IT equipment, that they undergo an induction, that they attend the national induction that the school organises, that they attend your trust induction, and that they attend your departmental induction, and that you've got training reviews in place and everything else. So again, a very extensive checklist that can be found on our website. So in summary, when hosting a trainee on this pathway, as I say, first thing you want to be doing is deciding whether you want to go down the in-service or the direct entry trainee route, and know what the rough dates are and put them into your diaries. Look out for that expression of interest, get in touch with the relevant people so that they can forward it on to you. Complete the expression of interest. Gain national school accreditation. Sorry, this is a bit of an engineering joke in terms of amplification gain, and then welcome your trainee into the department. So I think we now hand over back to Chris.
Thanks, Emma. I think I'm just going to summarise again the resources Emma's showed you for a moment. I misled you at the beginning of the session when I said we could ask you to ask live questions in this session. I'm afraid we can't because of the team setup, but the Q&A tab is available. So if there's anything you want to ask us and you want to start typing it in the Q&A tab, you can do that now. We'll try and answer those as best we can in a moment. But what I will do is let you know where you can come and have those conversations with us later if you want to. So more information. I have, rather than give you another URL, I've just summarised how to find this information on the website. So there is a news article on our website which is covering all of the information we've just shared with you in kind of one place, and that will also host the recording for this webinar when we've got that ready and available for you. So that might be your one-stop shop for finding out everything that you need to. The Getting a Trainee information is also on our website under the Home Programmes and Trainers section, and under our Information and Resources section you can find out everything that our accreditation team provides to help you gain your accreditation. Can't quite do the engineering jokes there, I'm afraid, though. If you do want to come and talk to us about any of this, we do host a monthly drop-in session. You can find the dates for those under our events tab. We have 2 more scheduled for this year. We're available online between 12:30 and 1:30 for each of those sessions. It's essentially an open office hour, so you can drop in at any point. There will be various representatives from the school available in those sessions. So come along and ask us any questions, and as I say, we'll do our best to answer those. We'll take a break for the summer holidays, but those will restart in September. So if you find yourself with a trainee suddenly arriving in September and you want to come back and talk to us then, there will be some more dates on the website shortly for that as well. Okay. So at this point, I'll ask if there are any questions. I think I'm going to have to give you a moment to do any typing if you want to. So I'll awkwardly pad for a moment. Is there anything in there at the moment, Sadie?
No questions at the moment, no.
So it should be on your Q&A tab. If you do want to ask us anything, I will give you a moment there. We were due to close at 1, I think, so I'll just give you 2 minutes to do some frantic typing, and if we haven't got anything from you at that point, we will return you to your afternoon. That means I feel the need to awkwardly talk to fill the silence. I will admit that I caught Rachel out there by changing years to phases, but that will be explained when you get to train the trainer, the phase concept. So we have got a question there. Is the course duration the same for anybody who is already practicing in intraoperative neuromonitoring, or will the number of years be reduced? I will start simply, and then Emma, Rachel, if you want to start with that. The STP is a 3-year programme, and it is always a 3-year programme, so the number of years are not reduced, even if you're already practicing. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Rachel?
Can I add to that, or?
I was going to come to you next, but you can do, yeah.
If somebody is already practicing and is practicing at a scientist level, then they could always use the programme claim equivalence, so they don't actually need to go through the full STP scheme if they've already got the appropriate experience prior to that, so they can then approach the academy and go through the equivalence process.
Thanks, Emma.
I was just going to say that obviously, no, the course doesn't shorten, but if they are already practicing, and although they're in that protected 3-year supernumerary role, they are at an advantage because they know practically what they're doing. So you lose less of a pair of hands than if it was someone that wasn't experienced. But you must remember to protect the trainee. You can't make them do everything that they would normally do, but it does mean that they can continue to practice while studying.
Thanks both. So I think a couple of options there. So if you're thinking about this for yourself, or you're thinking about it for your department, the programme will be the same length, but you might work well as an in-service candidate. As Rachel says, you need to be protected, but if you've got sufficient experience, you can approach the academy and consider the equivalence route. You'll be demonstrating equivalence to the curriculum that has just been published. I think Sally's put a link to the checklist that Emma shared there as well. Okay. Got a couple more questions, bear with me. So a question from Karen: how long an average does it take for a centre to be accredited? Emma first, do you have any knowledge on that?
Again, I think it depends on how much infrastructure is already in place, but obviously we would expect the accreditation process to be completed before you started a trainee. So at the very most, it will take, I say 6 months in terms of between you putting the expression of interest in. I say 18 months, so I can't do my adding, and getting a trainee through. But certainly note that the school's more than happy to work with you. So it's not meant to be an onerous process, filling in the forms. And you may well find that if you've got other departments who have got STP trainees, then they've already filled in quite a lot of the forms anyway. So you may want to approach them and work alongside them as well. But again, that's advice that we can give you directly from the school.
Thanks, Emma. Anything to add from your experience, Rachel?
I was going to say, just from my experience, it doesn't take very long. If you fill your form in properly, a couple of months. If you're like me and usually forget something, you get a few reminders from the school that you still haven't sent your training plan yet. But it doesn't take too long.
I will just add a small caveat to that, because this is the time of year where our accreditation team is in a little bit of under a little bit of pressure with everybody thinking through the same decisions that you are. So if I can just put a plea to bear with them slightly, and that they do know you're there, and they will get to you if you don't get an immediate response to any emails you send. So the next question we have is: do in-service candidates take the situational judgment test? I believe they do. Emma, do you?
I'm to be honest, I can't tell you. The information will be on the website, so I'm not 100% sure on that.
I didn't think they did.
That was my gut reaction.
Yeah, but I think they have to do the application form, which goes on to remind me of the name of the system.
Oriole.
But it's not shortlisted in the same way that direct entry candidates are. It's just used to apply to the university for the academic place, and then the university will get the trainee to fill in the HEI application forms. But to the best of my knowledge, they don't have to do the situational judgment test.
That's my gut reaction too. And so the reason for the application form is, again, just to check that the qualifications are appropriate for somebody entering a level 7 qualification. But again, there's been a little bit more flex on that in the last couple of years, and the information's on the website. So in the past, we certainly were expecting individuals to have a 2-1 or a first in their undergraduate degree, but there's now the acknowledgement that if they've had a considerable experience within the workplace, that if they have got a 2-2, that equivalent experience may well be equivalent to them that now working at a first or a 2-1 level. But again, that information is on the website.
I think I would just caveat that as well, as I think the final decision about the qualifications is down to the university. Yeah. And it would be Aston that is providing this, the academic content for this, and they are still quite strict about the level of qualification for there. So
thanks, both. A bit more informed than I was on that one. If you want to talk to us more about the recruitment process, which will be a little bit of a way off, just bearing in mind that won't start until New Year of next year, you can drop in and talk to us or drop us a line any time between now and then. Alan's with us this afternoon. Good afternoon, Alan. I hope you're well. And next question on when will the equivalence process launch? In theory, it can be available as soon as the curriculum is available. So I would say now, but we don't look after the equivalence process. So you will need to get in touch with the Academy and talk to them about the timelines on equivalence. So please do approach the Academy if you want to talk about equivalence with them. Let me see if I've got anything else there. I can't see any other questions at the moment. I have just popped that news link into the chat. Go on, Sally.
Sorry, Chris, there is one more. There's one. Is the curriculum available to view anywhere?
Yes, sorry, that was, thank you, Sally. I scrolled past that one. Yes, it is. I have just popped the news article where the recording for this webinar will also go in. You've seen the webinar. You may not want to watch it again, but if you want to share it with anyone, and the curriculum and many of the links that Emma's shared as well are in that news article as well. So that's in the chat for you to pick up and use from there. Thanks, Sally. Okay. As I say, if you do want to ask us any further questions, if you do want to drop in, if you do want to drop us a line in future, as I say, this recording will be on that news article in due course. If you do want to share that onwards with anybody, we try to get everything in one place to allow you to do that easily. And some of the links that Emma shared there have been put in the chat as well for you to pick up. I think we'll close this afternoon here. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for the team that was involved in putting this curriculum together. And I'm really pleased to see we've got some interest both in equivalence and in training today. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this pathway and delivery in the future. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.